You know, for decades, Jet Airways wasn't just an airline. It was so much more. It was a symbol of Indian pride, a promise of class and confidence, literally written across the sky. But somewhere between the clouds and the chaos, that beautiful symbol, well, it lost its wings. This is the story of its incredible flight and its tragic fall.
It's an ancient story, right? A myth that whispers a warning to all of us about ambition. But for Jet Airways, that whisper, it eventually became a deafening reality. To really understand how this dream even began, we have to go back to the early 1990s. This was a time when India itself was changing, opening its arms and, more importantly, opening its skies to the world. See, before this, flying was basically a state-run monopoly. But with this new policy of liberalization, the air was suddenly free. And this one monumental shift created a window, a massive opportunity for someone with a real vision to paint a brand new future. And into this new world stepped a quiet man, Naresh Goyal. Now, he wasn't some aviation tycoon who was born into power. No, he was a travel agent. But he saw something that everybody else seemed to miss, that Indian travelers deserved dignity. They deserved better than tired service and just endless delays. So in 1993, he did it. He launched Jet Airways. And get this, not with a massive fleet that shook the world, but with just 4 leased aircraft. That's it, 4. A humble, almost fragile beginning for what would one day become an absolute empire. And his mission? It was so simple, but at the same time, so profound. He wanted to bring dignity back to flying. Where other airlines were giving you chaos, Jet was going to offer calm. Where others sold you a seat, Jet promised you an experience. And you know what? India fell in love with this vision. Pretty soon, Jet Airways wasn't just another airline in India's skies. It was defining them. It was literally building an empire in the clouds. By the mid-2000s, it had earned its place as the nation's most trusted airline. To fly yet, well, it was a statement. It meant you had arrived. It was the quiet, confident sound of success. It was never, ever just about the flight. It was a feeling. You know, the immaculate cabins, the warm smiles from a world-class crew. It really was the golden bird of Indian aviation, a soaring symbol for a nation that was itself on the rise. From its launch, it took just over a decade to become number 1. Then, in 2007, the acquisition of Air Sahara stretched its wings even further, connecting India to London, Singapore, New York. The view from the top, it must have been beautiful. But you know how these stories go. Every empire has its reckoning. And even as Jet Airways was soaring at its absolute highest altitude, a storm was quietly gathering on the horizon. The challenges? Well, they came from all sides. Fuel costs were skyrocketing, but the big one, the real game changer, was a new breed of airline taking flight, the low-cost carrier. Companies like Indigo and SpiceJet weren't just competing, they were changing the entire rulebook. And the core conflict really boiled down to this. The Indian passenger was changing. That desire for luxury was giving way to a real demand for affordability. So while these new airlines offered a cheap ticket, Jet continued to offer a premium experience, truly believing their loyal customers would stay true. And this was the critical moment. Goyal refused to compromise on the vision that had brought him so far. He believed that the loyalty, built over decades of impeccable service, would be enough to weather the storm of these price wars. But in aviation, the math is just unforgiving. So, the debt began to pile up. It was this quiet weight that just grew heavier each and every day. Operating costs ballooned, and the airline that once symbolized perfection found itself drowning. The fall was about to be just as swift, just as stunning as the rise was glorious. Okay, just to give you a sense of the scale here. At its peak, the Jet Airways fleet numbered 120 aircraft. 120. A formidable presence, crisscrossing the globe, stitching continents together. And by the end, they were left with just 5. From 120 down to 5. The sheer scale of the collapse, it's staggering. And then came the day the skies went silent. April 17th, 2019. After 26 years in the air, India's most beloved airline just went dark. An entire empire had evaporated into thin air. But this wasn't just some corporate failure on a balance sheet. No, this was a profoundly human tragedy. Thousands lost their jobs. Dreams were grounded overnight. Families who had built their entire lives around this airline were suddenly left with nothing. So, what's left in the wreckage? What do we take away from all this? The story of Jet Airways is more than a business case study you read in a textbook. It's a warning, etched in the sky for all of us to see. It's a warning about the incredible danger of standing still in a world that never ever stops moving. The founder built something truly beautiful, but maybe, he held on just a little too tightly, refusing to adapt when he needed to. In the business of flying, you learn that ego can be a force heavier than gravity itself. The fall of Jet leaves us with these clear, quiet lessons. You have to adapt or you'll be left behind. You have to innovate or you'll become a memory. And above all, you have to stay humble because no empire is too big to fail. It forces us to ask this question, right? The story of Jet Airways is a painful reminder of just how fragile success can be and the breathtaking speed at which fortunes can turn. And perhaps that is the ultimate lesson here. True, lasting success isn't really measured by the peak altitude you reach. It's about your resilience, your humility, and your ability to navigate the inevitable storms that come your way.